Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll. Imagine having an incredibly highly paid, relentlessly attentive personal assistant who perfectly remembers absolutely everything you have ever read online.
Right. That sounds like the ultimate dream.
It is, but then occasionally with just absolute unwavering confidence, this assistant fabricates a 7,000-page dossier entirely out of thin air.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a bit of a nightmare scenario.
Exactly. So today we are opening up some really raw, unfiltered files to look at the brilliant and, frankly, sometimes terrifying reality of building a digital second brain. And before we really lay the groundwork, I have to mention that I actually stumbled across a couple of unfiltered raw files that completely set the stage for us.
Oh, nice. What are we looking at?
So I'm looking at two specific files. One is called Why Murty AI Second Brain Lies.pdf, and the other is Second Brain AI Competitors.pdf. Honestly, finding these notes, it was like receiving this sudden spark from a fellow traveler, I just have a genuine appreciation for whoever left those breadcrumbs behind for us.
Yeah, it really is a rare gift to find documentation that meticulous just out in the wild like that. It definitely sets a solid baseline for us. But to build on that, let's establish the parameters for you, the listener, right up front here. We aren't here to just read off some basic summary of productivity tools.
Oh, definitely not.
Right, we're not doing a software review. Instead, we're looking directly through the digital prism. Our mission today is to actually extract the legacy code of Project Antaryami.
I love that framing because we are zeroing in on a very specific real-world practitioner here. We are looking at lead architect Murty BVNS. And as a wisdom seeker focusing on Gurukul 2.0, I want to audit his highly complex, multi-layered second brain digital architecture.
Which is quite the labyrinth when you really dig into it.
It really is. I mean, if you've ever had 40 tabs open across 3 different browser windows and felt a mild panic attack trying to find that one profound article you read on Tuesday.
Oh, I've been there. We've all been there.
Right. Well, you are experiencing a micro version of the exact problem this architecture is trying to solve. We are exploring this very precarious high-wire tension between passive AI observation, tools that just quietly watch everything you do, and the high-friction, highly intentional manual knowledge management that actually makes learning stick.
Absolutely. And speaking from my perspective as a strategic auditor, to understand the legacy code here, you first have to understand the baseline architecture of lead architect Murty's current setup. The foundational layer is built around a tool called LittleBird AI.
Okay, LittleBird, how does that fit in?
So LittleBird acts as this persistent, silent observation layer. It is essentially a passive memory net. Its primary mechanism is taking continuous screen-level snapshots across all your desktop applications.
Wait, so it's literally just taking pictures of my screen?
Exactly. It watches the pixels rendering on your monitor, uses optical character recognition, or OCR, to extract the text from those visual images, and then it compiles all of that into a searchable, chronological timeline of your entire digital life.
Wow. So it essentially solves the whole I know I saw this somewhere problem by making your entire digital day searchable.
That is the intention, yes. However, this is where I have to look at this from a strategic auditing perspective and really challenge the core logic of the architecture. Because if LittleBird is already installed, acting as an all-seeing eye.
And it really sees everything.
Everything. It means it sees absolutely everything rendering on the screen. From offline family chat windows to, planning a physical temple visit across every single app. So if it already does that, why introduce this new DoppelBrain Chrome extension into the mix?
Yeah, that seems like overkill.
It does. Putting digital blinders on an eye that already sees everything just seems entirely redundant to me.
Well, you would naturally assume it's redundant. But looking through the files as a wisdom seeker, the structural difference between these two tools is actually massive. LittleBird is incredibly broad, catching everything on the screen, sure. But ultimately, it is just scraping text from a flattened image.
Right, the OCR method.
Exactly. So if a web page is visually complex or, if you scroll too fast, the optical recognition can easily miss the structural nuance. DoppelBrain operates on a fundamentally different plane. It passively reads the actual underlying HTML and the document object model, the DOM.
Okay. Which is the structural skeleton of the web pages you visit.
Precisely. Think of a website like a physical house. LittleBird is essentially driving by and taking a Polaroid of the outside of the house.
So it knows what the house looks like, but not how it's built.
Right, whereas DoppelBrain actually walks inside, looks at the architectural blueprints, and reads the actual 2x4s and wiring inside the walls. Because it reads the underlying code rather than just a surface image, it provides perfect text fidelity.
That makes a lot of sense. The legacy code actually uses a brilliant analogy to explain this distinction. If you look at a standard browser AI tool, like Leo AI, for instance, it acts essentially as a flashlight.
A flashlight? Okay, how so?
Well, it only illuminates the active tab you're looking at in that specific moment.
Yeah.
The second you close that tab, the light goes out and the context vanishes completely. DoppelBrain, however, is described as a filing cabinet that literally follows your cursor around the web.
A filing cabinet that instantly indexes everything it touches. That's powerful. And looking at the logs, it didn't just start as an empty filing cabinet either.
No, not at all.
Right. The moment lead architect Murty installed it, there was this massive event that the notes refer to as the bookmark resurrection.
The bookmark resurrection. I love that term.
It's so fitting. DoppelBrain instantly ingested his static graveyard of past bookmarks and browsing history. And we are talking about highly specialized, intensely complex data here.
And that diversity of the ingested data is exactly what makes the perfect text fidelity you mentioned so critical.
It really is. I mean, he had years of hyper-specific resources saved up. He's cataloging Telugu pedagogy techniques. He has extensive research on ancient Nadi astrology.
Like Nadi astrology.
Yeah. Which, just to pause on that for a second because it's fascinating, relies on analyzing unique human thumbprints to locate specific ancient palm leaves that supposedly predict life paths.
Wow. Okay, that is not your standard internet browsing.
No, digitizing and analyzing texts about thumbprints and palm leaf manuscripts is incredibly dense, complex information. And then you add in all the extensive virtual assistant training materials he has, and literally overnight, DoppelBrain turned that dormant, highly complex archive into a queryable database from day one.
But here's the thing. Gathering a massive silo of data, even a beautifully indexed one covering palm leaves and pedagogy, is honestly still just digital hoarding if it doesn't feed a production engine.
That was a very fair point.
Right. So we have to pivot from the observation layer and really look at how this data capture actually enables lead architect Murty to maintain his high-velocity output, specifically for the Antaryami VA podcast.
Yeah, let's look at that. His workflow for that production engine is intensely browser-centric. He is drafting distraction-free text in a web app called Calmly. He's publishing his public logs on write.as. He is tracking incredibly complex operational movements in ClickUp.
And he's doing all the synthesis in Notebook LM, correct?
Yes, synthesizing bilingual research, balancing English and Telugu sources, and parallel Google Notebook LM files.
It is a demanding, highly multi-platform ecosystem, which brings us to the theoretical promise of the Model Context Protocol, often referred to as MCP.
MCP, the magic bullet.
Theoretically, yes. In a theoretical environment, MCP is a framework that allows an artificial intelligence model to reach outside its isolated chat window and securely pull in external data sources. So the promise here is that DoppelBrain feeds all this perfectly captured DOM context directly to Claude via MCP.
Meaning, if Murty is actively drafting a podcast script and talking to Claude, Claude magically knows exactly what he read about Nadi astrology 3 weeks ago, without him having to hunt for the tabs, open the bookmarks, or copy and paste massive blocks of source text.
That is the absolute dream scenario for fluid knowledge work. But this raises an important question about architectural reality versus theoretical promise. Setting up MCP and getting Claude to successfully communicate with DoppelBrain requires manually editing raw JSON configuration files.
Ugh, raw JSON.
It gets worse. From a strategic standpoint, it has to be configured inside the Claude desktop application.
Wait, no, that completely contradicts his entire operational flow.
Exactly.
We just established that Murty is entirely browser native. Trying to force a browser-first creator to suddenly abandon their web tools, open up a local desktop application, and edit back-end JSON code. It's like wiring a state-of-the-art smart home and then realizing none of the physical plugs actually fit into your wall outlets.
It's a massive architectural bottleneck. The complexity of the bridge entirely defeats the purpose of crossing it in the first place. But lead architect Murty found a very pragmatic workaround for this.
Oh, what did you do?
He realized he doesn't actually need to force that desktop integration to extract the value. He bypasses the desktop friction entirely by using DoppelBrain's natural language side panel search directly within Chrome.
So he simply opens the side panel in his browser and types something like, what was that Telugu pedagogy article I read last week?
Yes. He stays completely inside his browser flow state. He queries his local database, gets the synthesized answer, and just keeps writing his script. No JSON editing or desktop context switching required.
That is an elegant bypass. But, digital data flows, no matter how elegant they are in the cloud, eventually have to be partitioned across the actual physical reality of a workspace. And Murty isn't just operating in a vacuum on a single pristine machine.
Oh, definitely not. The hardware reality mapped out in the logs is quite fragmented. He is operating across a multi-machine setup. There is an HP Elite Mini PC stationed in the office. There is an Asus laptop utilized out in the drawing room.
Which, humorously enough, the logs note actually outperforms the dedicated office machine.
Really? Why is that?
Because of thermal throttling on the mini PC, it's a classic hardware quirk where the tiny form factor just cooks itself under a heavy load.
Right, that makes sense. And then there's a third Acer machine kept offline specifically for emergencies.
Right. So running a passive, all-seeing observation layer across 3 different physical machines brings us to a massive structural dilemma, especially regarding the stakes of Gurukul 2.0.
This is where the real world impact comes in. Because Murty is currently upskilling 100 ex-Sachivalayam women.
Right, these are the former village secretariat workers.
Yeah, exactly. He's transitioning them into modern digital careers. He's actively mentoring them via the Antaryami VA Academy.
So the isolation dilemma here is severe. How do you prevent sensitive client research from bleeding into training materials or mixing with your personal memory banks? If LittleBird and DoppelBrain are just indiscriminately vacuuming up everything on the screen, the risk for cross-contamination between a client project and a VA training module is huge.
From a purely structural perspective, why doesn't he just create separate Windows OS profiles? You could have one Windows login for personal research, one Windows login for the Academy, and one for a specific client. That gives you ultimate operating system level security.
While that does offer total sandbox isolation, beating up a fresh Windows profile and logging in takes 30 to 60 seconds every single time you need to switch contexts.
And when you are moving at the velocity lead architect Murty is, synthesizing bilingual audio and managing 100 trainees, that kind of friction completely kills momentum.
Exactly. It's an unworkable solution for a fluid workflow. So from your strategic audit, what is the actual path chosen to secure this data?
The strategy relies on an application-level sandbox. He utilizes isolated Brave and Chrome browser profiles.
Okay. Browser profiles.
Right. He creates one browser profile for personal, one for Client X, and one for teaching. Because modern web browsers effectively act like their own mini operating systems, this neatly sandboxes DoppelBrain's memory and the LittleBird accounts without the sluggishness of OS switching.
You just click a button, the browser window changes color, and you have a completely segregated digital memory layer. That is remarkably clean. But I noticed there is a very firm rule established in this Gurukul session. DoppelBrain is strictly for Murty's personal research. It is absolutely not to be deployed to those 100 VA trainees.
Oh, absolutely not. You simply do not build institutional training foundations on beta software.
It's too risky.
Way too risky. DoppelBrain is an unproven tool with barely over 100 users. The concept of passive data ingestion is way too complex for trainees who are just mastering the fundamentals of manual data management.
Keeping trainees far away from unproven beta tools is a sound strategy, especially because a routine self-audit in these logs reveals exactly why you cannot blindly trust them. This actually brings us to what I think is the most fascinating cautionary tale in these files.
The moment the AI attempted to audit itself.
Yes. Let's set the scene for the listener. LittleBird, acting as that silent, all-seeing observation layer, was asked to provide performance metrics on this new DoppelBrain tool.
Okay, and what did it say?
LittleBird confidently cited highly specific, granular statistics. It stated that DoppelBrain had exactly 105 active users, that it was currently on version 1.2.0, and that it had successfully imported exactly 7,701 pages from Murty's browsing history.
And when an artificial intelligence outputs numbers with that level of specificity, human psychology is naturally wired to accept it as authoritative fact. You assume a mathematical counting process occurred in the background.
Right, you think it actually counted the files. But Murty used DoppelBrain's own AI to verify LittleBird's claims, and DoppelBrain flagged every single one of those metrics.
Probably. All of them.
All of them. It stated that none of those numbers, not the 105 users, not the version dates, not the 7,701 pages, existed anywhere in Murty's actual browsing history or any observable digital record. LittleBird had completely hallucinated the highly specific data.
That is insane.
It's like having an incredibly confident, highly paid executive assistant hand you a beautifully formatted, granular financial report, only for the chief accountant to step in and say, none of these numbers actually exist in the ledgers. You literally just made this up.
We have to unpack the underlying truth of why this happens, because it's absolutely crucial for anyone building a digital second brain. Large language models are not SQL databases querying hard facts from a server. They are predictive text engines.
They're just guessing the next word.
Exactly. They are mathematically calculating the next plausible token based on their training data. LittleBird didn't know it was lying. It just calculated that a beta extension might plausibly have around 100 users and that a typical user history might contain a few thousand pages. It predicted the token shapes to form sentences that sounded helpful and authoritative.
It invented specifics purely to fulfill the prompt, which brings us to the legacy code's ultimate verdict on this architecture. Passive memory layers are brilliant for ambient recall, for finding that one article you lost, but they absolutely cannot be the absolute system of record.
Because if the system of record can confidently hallucinate 7,000 pages of history, you can never fully trust it when the stakes are high. Which perfectly explains why lead architect Murty is forced to rely on active manual structuring.
Yes, we can literally see this operational shift mapped out in his ClickUp logs. Because AI hallucination proves passive tools can't be the ultimate source of truth, he took Blogger, which used to be his main hub, and demoted it to a mere public publishing layer.
Oh, so it's just a storefront now.
Basically, it's just there for SEO and embedding podcast episodes now. In its place, Notion has been elevated as the private, structured knowledge library.
And you can clearly trace this shift back to Murty's deep research into Tiago Forte's building a second brain methodology.
He even produced a Telugu YouTube video analyzing it. But for a listener familiar with the broad strokes of productivity, we really need to look at the nuance of Forte's methodology versus passive AI capture. It highlights a profound psychological tension in how we manage knowledge.
How so?
Well, DoppelBrain and LittleBird offer effortless capture. You just browse and the machine remembers. But Notion and Forte's methodology require intense manual intent.
Right. You have to actively decide a piece of information actually matters.
Yeah.
You have to distill it, tag it, summarize it, and manually organize it into a specific database. It requires significant cognitive load.
And that high-friction act of processing, the cognitive struggle of deciding what goes where and why it matters, is where actual human learning occurs. If the AI just saves it passively to a hidden folder, you haven't really learned it.
So the friction isn't a flaw.
No. The friction isn't a bug in the system. The friction is the feature. The friction builds the biological memory.
That synthesis right there brings us to the core of this entire Gurukul session. When you step back and look at the digital architecture for Gurukul 2.0, lead architect Murty BVNS is executing an incredibly delicate tightrope walk here.
He really is.
He is utilizing passive AI tools like LittleBird and DoppelBrain purely for ambient recall and context enrichment. They cast a wide net, but he absolutely refuses to let them be the foundation of truth.
For the verifiable source of truth, he relies entirely on high-friction manual structuring in tools like Notion and Write.as. He uses the AI to help him locate the raw materials, but he insists on swinging the hammer and building the actual house himself.
It is a masterful, really pragmatic approach to modern digital architecture. It recognizes both the brilliance and the severe limitations of our current tools.
As we wrap up this digital stroll, we've spent all this time talking about preserving our own past knowledge, but I want to leave you, the listener, with a completely different paradigm to chew on.
Okay, lay it on me.
We are racing to build these flawless digital systems, these perfect AI safety nets that faithfully catalog every article, every thought, and every search query we've ever had. But if AI eventually perfectly catalogs your entire life's data, what happens to the right to be forgotten by your own machines?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating angle. Do we lose the biological benefit of naturally forgetting things we've outgrown?
Exactly. Sometimes forgetting an old, outdated way of thinking is the only way our biological brains can make room for a new philosophy. If our digital second brains never let us forget who we were 10 years ago, do they subtly prevent us from becoming who we need to be tomorrow?
That is deep.
It's something to really ponder as you go about structuring your own digital world today. Thanks for joining us on this digital stroll, and we'll see you on the next one.